I'm Dave Thomas, and today I'm building the Illusion E2X model rocket kit from Estes. So this kit can actually go together without any glue, although I'll show you how you can glue it as well. And this should go together in probably about half an hour, even less than that. So this is a good kit if you've got like relatively younger Rocketeers who may not be ready for plastic cement and wood glue and such. We'll go ahead and open this up here and make sure we've got everything. Okay, now this is all completely pre-colored here, so you don't have to worry about painting or anything like that. Also, if you've built the Starship Octavius, this is very, very similar. In fact, they reuse much of the same parts here. So if you've built Octavius, this is going to be very familiar to you. Alright, go ahead and pull out the instructions here, and we will make sure that we have all of our parts. Okay, so first we have a self-stick decal sheet. Alright, pre-colored red body tube. Nose cone. And then we have a small parts package here that we'll open up as well. Alright, and in here we have our shock cord, engine retainer. Now the fins, there are actually two types, so there are two of these kind of swept back open fins, and then we have a more standard red fin here. Alright, here's our fin can, and then our shock cord anchor. Don't lose this, and sometimes it may get stuck among other things. Alright, but it's in two pieces. Oops, come back here. Alright, so these two here are the shock cord anchor. So make sure you find both of those pieces. And then finally we have the parachute. Alright, so let's check through here, and it looks like we have everything, so I'm going to set much of this aside and then we will get started. First we'll assemble the fin can here, and so this just snaps together, and we're just going to align the pegs with the holes there. Alright, and then you just squeeze this together. Now if you want a more permanent solution, you can glue this together. Alright, so either one of these is acceptable. If you'd like to glue it together, I recommend using a medium viscosity brush-on type of cement, simply because you have more control with this. Alright, and for this we're just going to hit all the little holes here, and also very lightly the surfaces that will come into contact with each other when we put this back together. Alright, now if you happen to brush some on a surface, like I got a little bit there, don't worry about it. Once this dries, it's very unnoticeable. Now you could also use the tube type plastic cement or even a low viscosity cement. The really low viscosity cements tend to dry really quick, so you have to move quickly. Alright, and I'm just going to put this back together again. Now again, this is optional. The kit is meant to go together without glue, but this just strengthens it a bit. Okay, and we want to get those seams as closed as we can. So this is, whether you use the glue or not, you really need to force this together. Okay, now we can put on the fins, and for the first one here, here's our launch lug. So the fin slot that's directly opposite that is going to be for the red fin here. Okay, and this just pops in there and slides forward, and it needs to go all the way forward so that the aft end of the root edge does not overhang the screw threads there. Alright, the other two fins then go on either side of the red one. And in the same manner, we want to make sure that it fully clears the threads of the motor retainer screw there. Okay, so there's our fin assembly. Now here again, if you want some added strength, you can glue the fins. I recommend gluing the fins after you've put them on like this though, because sometimes when you glue them beforehand, they get stuck halfway in and you end up with a really odd looking rocket. For this I am using a very low viscosity plastic cement. I'm just running that along the seams of the root edge here with the fin can. Now again here, if you happen to get a little bit where you didn't want it, just let it dry. If you try and wipe it up, it'll actually be more noticeable. Okay, and then the final step for the fin can here is we're going to add this retaining nut. Alright, not only does this keep the motor in, but it's supposed to lock the fins in place so that these are at least theoretically unable to come backwards. Now in some cases they do. In fact, I had a rocket launch 2 days ago where a similar rocket that had just the snap-in fins here, we put a high thrust motor in it and pulled the fins right off. If I had put the cement here, I don't think we would have had that problem. Alright, now because I do have some wet cement here, I'm not going to leave this on until I know that it's fully dried. Alright, turning to the next page. Okay, so here we're simply going to take the fin can, and on the fin can there are these two tabs that are sticking out a little bit. Those are going to go into these two rectangular holes, and so this is the aft end or rear end of the body tube. Okay, now this we do, let's see, that's going to be for our shock cord. This can go in either way. So all we need to do here is pop this in, and those little tabs there will lock it into place. Now this is another place if you want to strengthen the rocket. You can actually do it in one of two ways. One is to go ahead and just use the snap in here, but take a piece of cellophane tape and wrap that all the way around so it overlaps both the fin can and the body tube there. So that's one way you can reinforce this. The other is you can add some gel type super glue just inside the tube here. Now if you don't have the gel type super glue, you can use this tube type plastic cement. You can also use epoxy on here, but I hate mixing up a batch of epoxy for so little of a job. I'm going to go ahead and use the tube type plastic cement because it turns out I am out of super glue. Alright, so I'm going to put this just inside, and you want an even bead but not so much that it's just going to melt the plastic when you put the fin can in there. Alright, we just want a little bit of melting. Alright, so once again that goes in there, and if you want it even more reinforced, you can go ahead and put the tape on like I mentioned earlier. Okay, and again, all this glue is completely optional. Alright, next we need our shock cord. mount here. All right, and what's going to happen is this piece here fits in this hole, all right, and this little guy right there, that's going to stick down. And what we're going to do then is, once this is sticking into the body tube, this little clip goes on inside the body tube there. Okay, now note this is rounded, all right, so the convex side goes up against the body tube on the inside. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just pop this in. Alright, so that goes there. Alright, and then this is going to go, let's see if we can see that in there. I think you can just see it. Alright, so this clip is going to go onto that protrusion inside there. And then you just push it all the way down until it locks. Now, mine is not quite in line. Okay, and sometimes you can use like the handle of your hobby knife here if you need to, or something similar. Alright, so now you should be able to see that just inside there. There we go. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Okay, now we're going to thread the shock cord in through here. So if you look right in there, there's now a hole that goes into the body tube. Alright, you just need to align this and push it in. And then as soon as you get enough inside there, you can go ahead and pull this through like this. Now don't pull it all the way through because we need the other end here. Alright, so on the end that's coming out of this now, we're going to tie a double knot. Alright, so one on top of the other. Alright, and now I'm going to cut this free end back till I'm just got about 5 millimeters or just under a quarter of an inch there. I'm going to pull that back in. Alright, so most of that disappears in there. And then here again, if you want a little added security and strength on that, you can take some white glue or wood glue. Alright, here we do not want plastic cement or super glue, because those will both damage the rubber. Alright, I'm just putting a little dab in there, and that's just to help keep that knot from coming undone. Next, we're going to attach the parachute to the nose cone, and this can be done in one of two ways. One is to tie it directly on, which is what the instructions show, and the other is to tie it to a snap swivel and then use the snap swivel to attach to the nose cone. Either one is fine. I prefer the snap swivel method because it makes changing parachutes a lot easier. Regardless of which way you want to do this, the first thing we want to do is flatten this out, and then we're going to grab all of our shroud line loops here around one finger, and then with your other hand you're going to hold on to the center of the parachute sheet, and then you're going to adjust the relative lengths of the shroud lines, and you can also adjust where exactly that you're pinching this off. And the idea here is to get all of those corners lined up at about the same level like we've got here. Now if you're going to directly tie this on, you're going to pinch down on the loops there, and those will pass through the eyelet of the nose cone. Now in some cases there may be a little bit of plastic still in there. We call it flash. Just take your hobby knife and gently cut that out, but don't cut the eyelet. Okay. So once we get our loops through here, then we're going to reform them. Now note, I've always got a grip on the lines somewhere, usually on my other hand, and that's so that the relative lengths of the shroud lines compared to each other doesn't change. Alright, now here you can either take the nose cone and pass it through and then pull it tight, All right, what they show in the diagram here is you take the parachute, pass it through, and pull it tight. All right, so either one of those is going to end up with this directly tied to your nose cone. Now if you want to use the snap swivel method, you're going to start out in the same way. Those got a little bit tangled there. I'm going to redo this. So once again, go ahead and grab all of your shroud lines and the center of the parachute. Okay, and whoop, come back here. And once again, adjust the relative lengths here until we get them all down. All those corners are in the same spot. All right. Hold on to the loops once more. Now the snap swivel here, you can get these just about any place that sells fishing supplies. The size doesn't really matter for a rocket this light, as long as the snap part here is large enough to fit onto the eyelet of the nose cone without binding in one direction or the other. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my loops that I've cinched down here, and that's going to go through the swivel side, the round side there of my snap swivel. Alright, now I'm going to take the entire snap swivel, pass it through the loops, and pull the loops downward, like this, and then we just pull that tight. Okay, a final check here. Alright, I got a little bit of shifting there, but not enough that I want to worry about it. If you do need to readjust it, you can simply loosen this and try again. Alright, so if I loosen that there, alright, we can do a little bit of readjustment. You can just leave it on there, or you can just pull the snap swivel off again. Alright. In either case, once you've got this tied down, either to the snap swivel or to the nose cone, I highly recommend, again, putting a little dab of wood glue directly on that knot. And that'll just help keep that from slipping. Now again, you don't need to. All right, if you want to just go the complete glueless assembly, just make sure that knot is as tight as you can make it. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the shock cord. So if you did the direct tie-on method, your chute is already on here. And then next to it, you're going to tie on the nose cone. So we're just going to do 2 overhand knots, 2 half hitches, a double knot, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so we want a double knot on that nose cone, like that. Pull it from all directions so it doesn't slip. Okay, and I'm going to cut this back to about 5 to 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch there. We don't want to cut it all the way to the knot or it can be pulled through, but we also don't want a big free end here that could potentially get up between the shoulder and the body tube, and this could result in a faulty ejection. Like I did with the shroud lines, you can put just a little dab of glue on this knot as well. Again, white or wood glue, nothing with solvents in it. Okay, we're just going to work that in a little bit. Okay, now since I do have glue on these, I'm going to let everything dry for a few minutes and then we'll come back and do the final assembly. Now we can put everything together. So if you use the snap swivel method, go ahead and open the snap part here, and that's going to attach right next to our shock cord on the eyelet of the nose cone there. And again, this clip part should be big enough that everything moves around without getting bunched up or stuck in one position there. If you are preparing this for launch, 3 to 4 sheets of recovery wadding loosely crumpled should be stuffed down here first. All right. Now for our parachute, we're going to fold this in half so that the corners all overlap their opposite number here. All right, so I've got center corners, all right, and the the side ones up here, I'm going to fold my parachute sheet so that that overlays the center ones. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, so these two corners here are going to also overlay in the middle. So now we've got this kind of kite shape. Take the shroud lines, find approximately the center point, and just draw those up inside. Alright, so here we should have our snap swivel, or about an inch of shroud line hanging out. Alright, now fold the edges over the shroud lines. Alright, now we've got kind of a spike here. Take the tip of the spike, fold it down to these corners, and then we're just going to fold or roll the edges over like this, and that gives us kind of a cylinder. Alright, now take the shock cord and just stuff it down on top here. If you have wadding in there, if you're just putting this away, don't worry about the wadding. Alright, but that's one of the advantages of the snap swivel here too, is a lot of Rocketeers don't like to store their parachutes in the rockets because they may get more semi-permanently crinkled. Alright, and then we're going to gently ease the nose cone in. Now this is meant to have the cockpit here in line with the red fin. Okay, and now we're going to give this a shake test. And we failed. Okay, and actually there's an addition to the instructions that warns that you'll probably have to do this next step. So here we're going to put a little bit of masking tape. The addendum to the instructions shows using office tape, scotch tape basically. Either's fine. I'm going to start though with about half a circumference, maybe 2/3 there, and this is only on the shoulder. We're not trying to tape the nose cone to the body, we're trying to increase the friction here. Alright, so I'll put that in. That is still too loose. I'm going to add a little bit more here. Now I do want to be careful that I don't get anything stuck into the eyelet there of the nose cone. Okay, so what I can do then is once I've got this in place, I'll just kind of press that inward. Okay, and kind of cut around the eyelet there. And we'll try this once again. Now again, be careful you're not getting stuff caught in between the shoulder and the body tube. That shock cord really wants to get in there. Okay, so one more time here. We'll put this in, get this over. Boop. Catching something there. Alright, so now it's that shock cord. Alright. Alright, so now once again I'm going to give it a shake test here. That's good. So it shouldn't fall out when you shake it or drop it on the table, but it should come out relatively easily with a minimum of force there. Okay, so structurally this can go as it is, but we're going to add some decals to it here. I'm going to go ahead and now put the engine retainer nut back on here so I don't lose it. Okay, and now we can refer to this drawing here as well as the color one here on the packaging. Now these are all suggestions. As I said, we don't even need decals to fly this, but if you do want to put them on, we'll go through this here. You can also use different decals. You can put the decals in other places on the rocket. That's all up to you. Okay, this is your rocket and the decals don't mean anything to the flight. First thing I recommend doing here is washing your hands to kind of minimize fingerprints and oils and all that good stuff on the decals. I just washed my hands, and now we'll come back to our decals here. Now they do show on this illustration that you can apply the tape that I mentioned earlier and just wrap it around both the base of the tube and the fin can. So if you haven't done it already and you want to, this is the time to do it. Alright, so then we've got this big decal here. This is meant to wrap around the body tube. Now, a caution here, these decals tend to stick as soon as they hit whatever surface they're going to. And if you try and lift them up, a lot of times it will pull the color with it. So do be careful of that. Now, one of the things you can do with this big decal is kind of do the same thing that you would do with this office tape here, is we can overlap this with the fin can. And the idea here is to get this all, straight in the first take, and that is definitely not straight. Alright, so if I carefully lift this back up. Oh, see, you get that. Alright, so we're going to have to go with the way it is. I'm sorry to say. This is going to come out really crooked. Alright, so even the advanced experienced Rocketeers can have a decal failure every so often. Alright, we'll make the best of it here. Okay, so now I'm keeping just a little bit of tension on it so that I minimize the air bubbles. And it looks like we're going to luck out here. So if you look closely, there's a misoverlap there. Alright, and the same thing up here. But if you look a little bit further away, you can't see it. Alright, and the overlapped area is actually on the same side of the launch lug, so when this is on the launch pad, hopefully you won't see it there either. Okay, we've got this one here. This is meant to wrap around the forward end of the body tube here, and they've got a curve on that, which is kind of strange. So here I'm going to use the edge of the body tube as my guide and keep tension on this. Okay, that one came out much better. Okay, so the other ones here, these are going to go on the plastic parts of the rocket, which means it's a little bit more forgiving. Alright, so here's one of our... Nope, that's not even close. This is supposed to be a cockpit window. Here, let me take my nose cone out just to make it easier to work with. It's not too bad. Now to try to mirror image it. And not too, we'll go with that. Okay, and then these two here are meant to go on the red fin. And here you can use the root edge as kind of a guide there. Okay, and then we've got the Estes logo. It can go just about any place you want it to. I'm going to stick mine on the fin can here. Alright, so yeah, our main decal came out a little bit crooked. Actually a lot crooked, but it still looks okay. So here's our illusion from nose cone to fins. In terms of actual time, this took about half an hour, and that's including putting the glue on there. Okay, so this goes together relatively rapidly. Hope you had fun building this with me, and I hope your decals came out straighter. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.